When I found out the HOA president was secretly poisoning my mom's water to push us out of our home, I didn't just get angry, I got even. I bought the water rights to our neighborhood and cut them off completely. What would you do if someone was quietly making your family sick just to force you out? It all started while I was watering Mom's prized roses one afternoon. A sleek silver SUV pulled into our driveway, tires crunching the gravel. My stomach twisted the moment I saw it. Every time HOA President Linda Harper showed up, trouble wasn't far behind. "James," Linda called through her barely cracked window, "those garden statues have to go. They violate Section 8, Paragraph 12 of the Community Guidelines." I set the watering can down. "They've been here 7 years, Linda. Since Dad passed." Her smile was cold, never touching her eyes. "Rules are rules. I've been patient, but the board's pushing. Remove them by Friday, or it's $200 per statue." As her SUV backed out, I counted the 8 little figures, each one tied to a memory of Dad. That'd be $1,600 in fines, money we couldn't spare with Mom's mounting medical bills. Mom appeared at the screen door, leaning on the frame for support. Was that Linda again? "Just HOA stuff." I lied, not wanting to worry her. She'd been having dizzy spells lately, and the doctors couldn't pinpoint why. That night, I wrapped each statue in newspaper and stashed them in the garage. Dad had picked one out every year for Mom's birthday. Now they sat in the dark, like bits of our joy being chipped away. Friday rolled around, and there was Linda, clipboard in hand, strolling the neighborhood like she owned it. She stopped at our garden, nodding dramatically before scribbling something down. By Monday, a new notice arrived. Our mailbox wasn't the right shade of blue. It had to be repainted midnight azure from the HOA's approved palette. "It's just a mailbox," I told Mom as I brushed on the paint. "Not worth a fight." But the next week, it was the bird feeder, then the wind chimes, then the hedge height. Each time Linda stopped by, Mom seemed worse, more exhausted, more disoriented. I started wondering if the stress was dragging her down. One night, taking out the trash, I caught Linda's husband, Mark Harper, lingering near our water meter. When he saw me, he hurried off, pretending to check his phone. "Everything okay?" I called. "Just walking the dog," he mumbled, though no dog was in sight. I mentioned it to our neighbor, Susan Carter, who lived across the street. "The Harpers don't even have a dog," she whispered, leaning over her fence. "And between you and me, Linda's been targeting anyone who opposed her in the last HOA election. Your mom was the only one who spoke out against her plan to double the dues." That night, Mom threw up dinner. Her skin looked jaundiced in the bathroom light as she slumped over the toilet. "We're going to the hospital," I said, helping her to the car. The ER ran tests, but found nothing concrete. "Could be a virus," the doctor guessed, "or something environmental." "Any changes at home?" On the drive back, Mom dozed off. I took the long route past the Harper house. Their lights were on, and through the kitchen window, I saw Linda and Mark laughing over wine glasses. Next morning, Mom couldn't get out of bed. Her hands trembled so much she couldn't hold her coffee. I called Dr. Gwen, who fit us in. While waiting, I checked our property line near the water meter where I'd seen Mark. The soil looked disturbed. Kneeling, I spotted tiny blue droplets on some rocks. Then my phone rang. The hospital. Mom had collapsed at Dr. Gwen's office. "We're running toxicology," the nurse said. "The doctor suspects poisoning." Poisoning? My mind raced to Mark by the meter, the blue drops, Mom's symptoms worsening after Linda's visits. I grabbed a security camera from the hardware store and set it up in our oak tree, aimed at the water meter. If Mark came back, I'd have proof. Mom stayed in the hospital 3 days. Tests showed odd chemicals in her system, stressing her liver and kidneys, but nothing identifiable yet. "Any pesticides or new cleaners at home?" Dr. Gwen asked. Back home, an HOA notice waited. Fines for unauthorized landscaping because I hadn't mowed while at the hospital. As I crumpled it, my camera pinged. Someone was at the meter. I bolted outside, catching Mark hurrying away as Linda waited in their SUV, engine running. "What are you doing to our water?" I yelled. Linda rolled down her window. "James, you're clearly stressed. Maybe your mom's illness is clouding your judgment." They sped off before I could answer. My hands shook as I checked the footage. Mark pouring something from a bottle into our water line, Linda keeping watch, both smirking. I collected a water sample from our tap and grabbed the video. They were poisoning my mother, and I'd make them pay. At the water testing lab, a nondescript strip mall storefront, technician Mike took my sample seriously when I explained. Full results in 48 hours, he said, but I'll run a quick check for common stuff today. At the hospital, Mom's skin was gray, her eyes sunken. The neighbors keep asking about you, I said, forcing cheer. Susan brought soup. Even old Mr. Evans sent flowers. She tried to smile. And Linda? Another violation notice. Don't worry about her, I replied. My phone buzzed. Mike. Call me ASAP. I stepped into the hall. Ethylene glycol, he said grimly. Antifreeze. Low levels, but it's there. Never seen it in home water. Call the cops now. I raced to the police with the sample and footage. Officer Daniels took my report, but looked dubious. The video shows someone at the meter, but not what they're pouring. Chemicals can get in water lots of ways. My mom's in the hospital with organ damage. I snapped. The timing's too perfect. We'll look into it, she promised, but we need solid proof. Frustrated, I got home to another HOA notice. Unauthorized security equipment must be removed in 24 hours. They knew about the camera. They were watching us. Next day, I hid 3 more cameras around the property. At the hospital, Dr. Nguyen confirmed, ethylene glycol matches her symptoms. We're adjusting treatment, but her kidney damage might be permanent. Permanent. Rage surged as I drove home. A voicemail waited. HOA Treasurer Robert Klein. James, we need to discuss these accusations. Accusing residents of crimes without proof has consequences. I deleted it and called my old college buddy, Chris, now an environmental lawyer. They're poisoning her slowly to force us out, I explained. She opposed their fee hikes. This is big, Chris said. If the police won't act, we'll get creative. Tell me about your neighborhood's water setup. For hours, we pored over records. Chris found gold. Unlike most areas, our water came from private wells owned by Clear Springs Incorporated, not the city. They filed for bankruptcy last month, he said, sending a link. Selling assets cheap. What if I bought it? I asked. Whoever owns the water controls it, Chris replied. But it's a huge move. I thought of Mom's fading health, the hospital bills, Linda's smug face. I've got savings, my 401k, and home equity. Next morning, Linda's SUV blocked my driveway. James, the board's worried about your mom, she cooed. If her health makes upkeep hard, there's a nice assisted living place in the next county. My fists clenched. She's not going anywhere. Well, she sighed. The fines are over $3,000 now. If you can't pay, we'll lien your house. I never got notices for most of those, I shot back. Properly delivered, she waved off. Be careful drinking the water around here, I warned. I hear it's not safe. Her smile flickered. At the hospital, Susan and 3 other neighbors who'd clashed with Linda visited Mom. We don't buy the HOA stories, Susan said. Karen's gotten worse since taking over. Anyone else sick? I asked. Not sick, Mr. Evans said, but my dog died suddenly after Linda griped about his barking. Vet couldn't figure it out. I showed them the water test, but kept the video private. We're with you, Susan promised. Just say how we can help. That night, I called Chris's banking contact, drained my savings, and took a home equity loan. Dr. Nguyen pulled me aside next visit. Her kidneys are at 40%. She'll need dialysis, maybe a transplant. In the parking lot, fury built. Chris called. Our offer for Clear Springs Inc. was accepted. In a week, I'd own the HOA's water supply. As I sat by Mom's bed, I vowed Linda would regret this. The lab confirmed antifreeze in our water, slow poison. I called Detective Rivera with the video and results. It's not enough, she sighed. We need direct evidence tying them to it. Another HOA notice hit. Remove the cameras or face a $500 fine. I laughed bitterly, pacing all night, digging online. Then I remembered. Dad once mentioned our water came from a private company. In his old files, I found it. Clear Springs Inc. owned our wells. Research showed they were bankrupt. I called Chris. Could I buy it? Yes, he said, but what's the plan? Justice, I replied. Linda visited Mom in the hospital with lilies, feigning concern. We're praying for you, Evelyn, she said, touching Mom's foot. After she left, Mom frowned. She's never brought flowers before. Mom, I said. Do you trust me? With my life, she whispered. I might need to do something big. She smiled faintly. Fight fire with fire. The bankruptcy attorney gaped when I offered to buy Clear Springs Inc. It's a mess, old systems, debts. What? Personal reasons, I said. The price wiped out my savings, 401k, and required a loan, but Mom's worsening condition left no choice. I signed the papers weeks later, owning the water supply that fed Linda's world. At the hospital, Dr. Nguyen said, the damage might be permanent. Rage flared. Then I saw Linda in the gift shop, buying more flowers, smirking as she wrote a card. That night, HOA Treasurer Robert called. We know you bought Clear Springs. We need to meet. Not interested, I said. Be reasonable, he pressed. Tell Linda and the board they'll hear from me tomorrow. I drafted notices, water rates up 400%, and mailed them at dawn. Linda pounded my door next morning. This is extortion, like poisoning my mom. I replied, you have no proof. I have control now. At an emergency HOA meeting, Linda branded me a water terrorist. I took the mic. My mom's dying because of antifreeze in our water. I have video of Mark tampering with it. The crowd murmured. Linda screamed, lies. Neighbors spoke up, sick pets, kids, after disputes with her. Chaos erupted. Later, an anonymous video arrived. Mark pouring antifreeze, Linda plotting. I sent it to the HOA list. By noon, police arrested them. Mom's kidneys failed. She started dialysis. Neighbors raised $1,470 for her bills. The story hit the news. HOA couple poisons neighbors over statues. Linda and Mark got 12 years each. I gave Clear Springs to a community trust, funding victims' care. Mom came home to cheers and garden statues lining our yard. Exempt from HOA rules forever. We named the community garden after her. I keep the cameras on. Some lessons stick.